그러면 이제 두 번째 발표자인 호아킨을 서두르도록 하겠습니다. 박수로 맞이해 주십시오.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. Thank you for attending to the Hiprayuniversity that we have prepared in relation to the soil reproduction, which is a factor that it has a high impact in the farm efficiency. With Antonio, we have reviewed very important facts as are the puberty of the gill, which factor we need to take into account and how to monitor it, and also the artificial insemination programs. He has finished with 2 clinical cases related with parvovirus and erysipelas, which are diseases that have a higher impact that we can be aware in our farms. Now I'm going to present the tool that Hipra offers to control these 2 diseases. I like to compare the reproductive losses in our farms with an iceberg. On the tip of the iceberg, we have those problems that we can perceive easily. Those are diseases or management problems that are going to cause acute outbreaks, return to estrus, abortions, these type of things that we can be aware easily. But then we have the biggest part, those problems or those disorders that we are not aware, that are causing chronic or subclinic losses. And for example, think only in how many sows are returning to estrus that we don't know the cause, or we have abortions of one sow at 40 days of gestation or 70, or when we have a litter with a low number of piglets, or when we find a litter with a high number of mummified piglets. These are all these problems that we can find daily in the farms, but are not acute, are very chronic, and we need some diagnostic tools to be aware, or also a deep data analysis to diagnose these problems. So, well, when we think about the differential diagnosis of the infectious causes, we have these pathogens that are going to mainly cause all these disorders, the acute ones and the chronic ones. From all these disorders, the ones that for all these pathogens, the ones that for sure we are going to find in our farms are parvovirus and erysipelas, which are commonly found in the animals, but also in the environment. So those that are going to be more prevalent are going to have a huge economic impact at the end of the year, because of these subclinic or chronic processes. And why these erysipelas and parvovirus are going to cause these chronic or subclinic problems? First reason is the vaccination rate, especially for parvovirus. The vaccine works well, but sometimes we are going to find gaps in the immune protection that are going to cause these problems related with parvovirus. And then this is the antibiotic use that the high antibiotic use in our farms in our day-to-day that are going to mitigate the effects of erysipelas. So that's why we are not going to find acute outbreaks. And these 2 diseases are underdiagnosed because 2 main reasons. The clinical symptoms and disorders that are going to cause are not specific of the disease. Only for example, the skin lesions, but how many diseases are causing abortions or lameness, the erysipelas, or small litter size of the parvovirus. So at the end of the year, as I said, these underdiagnosed problems are going to have a huge economic impact. So looking now, let's get into detail with each one of the pathogens. When we look nowadays, this is a very recent report from the USA where they mentioned that swine erysipelas is driving a resurgence of economic impact in our farms. And that's why, because when we look at the geography, we can find that around 30 to 50% of the animals in our farms are infected by are carrying erysipelas in their tonsils and the lymphoid tissues, and also it's a highly resistant bacterium in the environment. So the erysipelas is going to be in the farm. So when we have a problem with the immune status in the farm, or when the vaccine is not working properly, that's why we can observe problems related with erysipelas. And why we can say that it's an underdiagnosed disease? Here in this report, in this research article from Tanya Opresnik, who is the main researcher for this bacterium, she mentioned that it's an underdiagnosed disease because of the non-specific clinical symptoms. Okay, everybody has in their mind the skin lesions, but has much more problems related. And also, sometimes go unnoticed in the farm because we are not going to observe acute problems because for erysipelas we have different clinical forms, and the most important is the chronic one. And why re-emergent? Because of the reduction in the use of antibiotics, as I said, the high use of antibiotics that has been present in the farms in Europe, USA and Asia has mitigated the effect of this bacterium in the farm when the vaccination protocols were not working properly. Also, the welfare condition as the group gestation is going to increase the circulation of the bacterium in the farm. And even the climate change, it's mentioned here in this article because of the warming temperatures. This is an article that has been released just a couple of months ago, coming from China, and they measure which are the bacteria that are present in the aerosols in the pig farms. And they found that Erysipelas is one of the most common, and so that's why it's a potential risk of causing disease, not only for the pigs, also for the workers. Well, really important. We don't need to have only erysipelas in our minds when we see skin lesions. Antonio mentioned that, for example, in the case that he has explained, they didn't observe skin lesions, but they had abortions. And the abortion for erysipelas are caused because the high fever, there is in a lethargy, and finally abortions. Also vaginal discharges, as we have seen. Even the acute problems of the subclinics can derive in sudden death because of the valvular endocardiosis that it can cause. That's sometimes we can have a sudden death of a sow, but we don't know. We are not going to check the heart. Maybe we could find this type of lesions caused by erysipelas. Lameness is also present in those cases of chronic problems. And of course, we can find the skin lesions in the sows and also in the fattening animals. And also, very important to consider, we are talking about a zoonotic disease. Okay, these are erysipeloides lesions in humans, so we need to be aware of that, so it's really important to control in our farms. Well, let's now with parvovirus. Parvovirus, when it's not controlled, can cause, it's considered one of the main causes of reproductive disorders in pigs, causing the clinical SMEDI, stillbirths, mummification, embryonic death, and infertility. As we mentioned, based on the bibliography, around 98% of the farms parvovirus is present. Frequently, the gilts is the most sensitive group of animals that because are going to be negative, and because of the vaccination rate, as we have commented, probably the vaccination about parvovirus is one of the most spread worldwide. It's difficult to observe big outbreaks. Always we maintain the vaccination protocols. Okay. Here we have the scheme of the gestation of the sow from the conception till the farrowing, and this is to review that parvovirus is causing more disorders than only mummified piglets. When the infection happens between the day 0 and the day 6 of gestation, the embryos is going to be protected by the zone pellucida. So although the parvovirus crosses the placenta, the embryos is not going to be infected. Between day 6 after the hatching or implantation till the day of ossification around day 35 are going to happen these embryonic losses that Antonio has commented in his previous presentation. If affects all the litter, we are going to observe irregular return to estrus. But if affects partially to the litter, we are going to observe the small litter size. And when the infections happen between day 35 after the ossification till day 70-80, where the fetus starts to be immunocompetent, it's where we are going to have fetal mummification, the characteristic symptom of this disease. And after this, when the fetus starts to be immunocompetent, it will depend till the day of farrowing. If the sow gets infected and the virus crosses the placenta, it will depends on how hard is the infection or how pathogenic is the strain, and it will also can cause stillborn piglets in the south. And well, when we look at the bibliography for the control of parvovirus, the vaccination is the best control. We need to be aware that the intentional infection of the parvovirus once we enter the source in the farm is dangerous. Why? Because we cannot rely that all the animals are going to be boosted by a field infection, and also it's dangerous because if we are putting some placentas or mummies during the period of the gestation in order to reinforce the immunity, it can derive in a spread of other diseases. So based on Andres Streck and Uwe Truyen, who are the main researchers for parvovirus, the main or the proper tool for the control of this disease is the regular vaccination every 4 or 6 months, usually 10 to 15 days after each farrowing. Okay, how can Hipra help to control these two diseases? On the one hand, we have the vaccine, erythemparvo, and on the other hand, we have the services. During the break, you have been some videos about the services we offer, for example, the PCR for parvovirus, for the serologies for erysipelas and parvovirus. Now we are going to get into detail about the vaccine. Erythemparvo is a bivalent vaccine, including on the same range, the same group of vaccines than Rinicen and Suicen that probably you also know. And as I said, it's a inactivated bivalent vaccine. It contains antigens for erysipelas and parvovirus, and also for the inactivated vaccines, it's really important the adjuvant in order to develop a proper immune response. And here at Hipra we have a differential point, which is Hipra G. Hipra G is a state-of-the-art aqueous adjuvant that has been developed, registered and patented by Hipra, and the differential point is that it contains ginsenoscites. So we have an aqueous adjuvant which offers a high profile of safety, but at the same time the ginsenoscites are going to help to develop the immune response, because these ginsenoscites have multiple effects, and the most important is that they are going to increase the presence of antigen-presenting cells in the site of the injection of the vaccine. These antigen-presenting cells are going to transport to the lymph nodes all the antigens that we are introducing with the vaccine to the lymph nodes where the immune response will be developed. What about the antigens? What makes them different? Regarding erysipelotic rhizocalciae, the strain that we are including has an overexposure of the SPA proteins. When we look at the bibliography, the SPA proteins are the surface protective antigen and are the main immunogenic factor. So these are the SPA proteins, so this strain is modified in order to express a higher number of these proteins. So it's going to help to develop a higher immune response. And which are the differences between the live and kill vaccines for erysipelas? We know that here in Korea, the ones that you have been using for years, it's a live attenuated erysipelas strain combined with the classical swine fever antigen. During the last year, we carried out a field study here in Korea that we are going to present you, that we also published on the last IPBS in Brazil. This is the first publication. It's titled Swine Erysipelas Seroconversion Failures on South Korean Vaccinated Farms. All the farms were using the same vaccine, the classical swine fever plus erysipelas combo. In total, we sampled 600 animals in 26 different farms. And what we can see here is the range of positivity. Okay? Here we have the number of farms. We can observe that 5 farms had only a range of positive animals. It means with enough level of antibodies to protect to the erysipelas, between 0 to 10%. It is even more farms than all farms that would be in a range where they would be protected in terms of population. Okay, and why? Why we have observed so high number of negative animals after vaccination? Because, as I said, it's a live vaccine, and when we look for in the bibliography why this can be happening, it's because of the interaction with antibiotics. When we use this type of live vaccines, we need to stop the antibiotic treatments around 8 to 10 days before, and also the in-feed antibiotics are affecting to the development of the immune response. And we cannot forget that it's also a live vaccine. So in Japan, it has been reported that this attenuated erysipelas vaccine also can cause chronic problems. In fact, having chronic problems related with erysipelas, when they have an isolation, they found the same strain than in the vaccine. And again, it's a zoonotic disease. Imagine that a farmer injects the vaccine also could cause erysipeloides problems. With the same results, we developed another word, and when we collected the data from the farms, we also collected the rate of antibiotics they were using, always only for treatment and rarely. And here we can see the rate of positive and negative animals based on the quantity of antibiotic use. In those farms that are always using antibiotics, only 20% of the animals had enough antibodies for the protection. And in those farms that rarely only reach the 70%. We would need to, in order to have an immune protection, a population immune protection, at least an 80% of the immune response. So this current vaccine use, although we are not using antibiotics or rarely, they do not reach the protective level for erysipelas. And the last trial we did was to compare the immune response elicited by these local vaccines with erythemparvo and a control group in order to demonstrate that there was not erysipelas circulation and the immune response was developed only by the vaccination. We included 30 naive animals. And here we can see the average titers 3 weeks after the 2 shots of the vaccine. The control group, we have an average titer of 7.4, 31 in the competitor group. On average, they do not reach the cutoff, and the level of immune response in erythemparvo was 97. As I said, 3 weeks after the 2 shots vaccination, the control group, all the animals were negative. In the competitor or the local group, only 3 animals, and with erythemparvo, the 10 animals were positive. Okay, and regarding parvovirus, for parvovirus we contain the strain NADL2, and we have demonstrated protection against homologous and heterologous parvovirus strains. On this paper, this is the last paper that has been published here from Korea, from the University of Seoul, and they report the latest parvovirus strains that has been isolated here in Korea. And they mention that the strains isolated are similar to the one to the 20th century. So the modern strains becoming more similar to the previous one, to the ones that has been included in the vaccines. Well, this is the genetic tree for different parvovirus strains, and here is to remark that although we have strains that are far from the others, here is the one that we have here in the vaccine, we must expect protection always that we have an immune response for parvovirus. This table, it's one of the trials we did with erythemparvo. We vaccinated naive animals, and after they developed an immune response, we collected the serum and we did an in vitro virus neutralization with different strains, with homologous and heterologous strains, and we observed that there is viral neutralization with the different strains. Although, of course, it's lower with there is a heterologous strain, but we still have enough protection to protect the animals. Okay, and apart from that, of including erysipelas and parvovirus, erythemparvo can be combined with a PRRS vaccine, in that case with unistrain pairs. So we offer the protection against 3 diseases in just 1 shot. Okay, and regarding the vaccination plan, an important point that we know that here in Korea, for example, with parvovirus, in some farmers or some companies, they don't use to vaccinate the animals in every cycle, as we can see that it should be implemented in the farms in the articles, and also as Antonio has commented. So how often? Only the gills and the first parities, or in all parities? We are going to answer this question. And when? Which is the best moment for the protection of this animal? When should we vaccinate the animals? During the gestation, during the lactation, or in a mass vaccination program? Okay, regarding how often, as we have commented previously, every cycle, in order to reach an homogeneous herd immunity status. If we want to avoid these chronic or subclinic problems, we have to have a herd immunity. Okay, because why? Because the natural infection, it's not going to develop an immune response for the long life of the cell. For parvovirus, according to the bibliography, can vary from 4 to 13 months, and for erysipelas, around 6 months. So if we vaccinate every cycle, well, during the lactation, we will comment later, we are going to start the gestation with the highest level of antibodies, so we are going to cover the whole gestation. In this study we published in the last APBS in collaboration with the University of Chulalongkorn in Thailand. We published the data from our own lab, from Hipra lab, and also from Chulalongkorn University in terms of inhibition of hemagglutination for parvovirus. And we collected the data from farms doing partial vaccination, it means only in the gills and the first parity, and we observed that in those farms with this vaccination protocol, around 11% of the subpopulation were susceptible to suffer parvovirus-related problems, and in those farms with complete vaccination program, it means every cycle, only 2.5% of the population was susceptible to have these problems. Okay, this is also collaboration we did with the same university, and we also collected data from farms with a complete vaccination program and with partial vaccination program. And here, looking at the reproductive indexes in terms of percentage of mummified piglets and the litters with more than 30% of mummified piglets, we can see by significant statistical differences a lower percentage for those farms with a complete vaccination program. Okay, so if we think that the objective of the reproductive vaccines is to protect during the next gestation to the sow. So in order to, and as we are aware that the time to develop the immunity booster after the vaccination is 3 weeks, if we want to start the gestation with a higher level of antibodies, we need to vaccinate the sows during the lactation, around day 7 to 10 more or less, or day 7 to 14. Here it's very important to remark that, as Antonio has mentioned in his presentation, the safety of the vaccine. If we are going to provoke fever to the sow during the lactation, it's going to impair the feed intake. So it's very important to evaluate the safety of the vaccine. And just to conclude the presentation, I want to introduce you a clinical case we presented in the IPBS in Brazil, of a clinical case we had in Spain and was managed by the Spanish technical team by Hipra. It was a farm that they were having some problems of some increase of parvovirus, and during the month of March they sent samples to analyze, and the result was positive. We can see here how from March onwards, if we compare with the basal percentage of mummified piglets, it increases to 3.65%, which it means an increase of 50%. Okay, this farm, after the positive diagnosis, they started to vaccinate with erysenparvo again on May, and during the first furrows after the vaccination with erysenparvo, the percentage of mummified piglets decreased radically. Okay, we recovered the previous percentage of mummified piglets before the outbreak. Here we see the data. We did a statistical analysis, and we analyzed with our technical team from Hipra in headquarters, and we compare here the 2 periods using the previous vaccine and erysenparvo, with a reduction of 38% in the rate of mummified piglets. And here we have classified the litters based on the number of mummified piglets, 0, 1, 2, or 3, or more than 3. And we see that during the period with the vaccine A, the percentage of those litters with 3 or more mummified piglets was 6.4%, which is not very high, but we can see how after the vaccination with erysenparvo decreased a lot to 1.2%. Okay, and just for the conclusions, I know that erysipelas and parvovirus are not in the top of your mind, because of course you have a lot of diseases you have to worry, as the PRRS, the African swine fever. You have a lot of worries in the farm, but we need to think that these diseases that we don't pay the attention that they deserve also can cause problems in the farm that we are not aware. And there are forms of protection that can do, as we can see, that to establish the proper situation for the control of these diseases. And in relation to erysenparvo, We are offering 2 pathogens in just 1 shot of 2 milliliters. It means convenience welfare as we are reducing the number of injections, even when we are combining with PRRS vaccines. It's going to develop a high immune protection, faster, higher, and longer than the current vaccines here using in Korea, as we have seen, and also we are offering a wide range of protections in terms of parvovirus. And also very important, the safety profile of the vaccines, thanks to the adjuvant. And we have not get into detail of the services that Hipra offers, but it's a different range of services that are going to help to monitor those diseases in your farms. Okay, thank you very much for your attention and your time. And now we are going to spend some more time discussing about reproduction with Antonio and Alex.
네, 긴 시간 들어줘서 감사합니다. 그럼 저희 이제 다음에 토론 시간으로 해서 넘어가 보도록 하겠습니다.